Hi, everybody. On here coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video. It's been a long day, but I'm going to get this out anyways. I want to talk about what we have coming up in our world events for October and 2023. That's where we are. Sorry, my head is still not completely with it yet this evening, but I'm getting there. Anyways, I want to share some of the things that are going on, what we can expect through our world events, what might be coming hot during this upcoming month, and to just share what the influences, the code influences are. If you're not familiar with my work, you can go on over to connectingcodes.com and you can check it out. It's a great option. I can show you even, and I've got my yep, they disappeared off the screen. I've got my video up. Not sure if this will show up or not, but the code journey, this is what 2023 looks like. Oops. Well, it was almost there for a second. There we go. Anyways, I put that book out every year, and it is I have 2024 available in case you want to get the heads up on that. And if you like what I share in this video, then feel free to like the video, like the channel, like the playlist that it's under for those that have a playlist on it. And if you don't find it on one forum, you're likely to find it on another, because I'm also on BitChute and also Brighteon in addition to YouTube. So there we have it. Let's jump right in today and let's get going on this. In the general influences for the month, what we have going on is there's more that's going to be coming up in regards to partnerships and connections this month. So a lot happening around that. And we're going to see where there are alliances. We're going to have alliances that are going to be getting exposed. So some deeper layers of the connections. Some people already know some of the connections that are going on in the world. When we look at the Obamas and the Clintons and all of these people and Soros and the different organizations, people are familiar with a lot of the connections out there, but we're going to see some deeper layers of that, bigger connections coming forward. And that's going to get really interesting. Those creating a positive existence will be supported. So we really want to see who is finding their support and who is not finding their support when you start to look at things. And we know a lot of times these corrupt players are getting more and more resistance when they go places. They're getting booed, they're getting things shouted out in the crowd and chants against them and things like that. And so we really want to look, who truly is supported and who isn't. And that's going to kind of help us to clarify who's operating in what way and who isn't. Upheaval or attacks on family are also coming in. So this is going to get interesting because we're going to have a couple of things that we could see this in. We could see upheaval within the family units of those in corruption. So, there could, I'm not thinking it's going to happen with Soros and his son, but we could see it, for example, like in the Biden family. We could see some things happening maybe in the Obama family. We know that Obama's brother is oftentimes bringing stuff up, so we might want to watch for that. But I think even bigger than that, I think the focus is really going to be on working on removing family rights, government attempting to remove kids from their home, and showing where that's happening, and trying to take more ownership of children. Now, we're already seeing some bills that are being passed in California around this type of thing of removing parental rights, and that is also happening in some other areas as well. And some other states are already working on that as well. So we really want to be careful of that. You really, if you're a parent out there, you definitely want to take a look at what's happening in your state and your local areas. Take a look at what's happening in the schools and things that might be focused on breaking that family unit down, because I think it's going to start to get a little bit uglier. And hopefully those mama bears will rise up and speak up and vocalize their opinion, as well as daddies out there. I hope you do too. This is a big thing. We don't want the state owning our children. We don't want the state being able to remove them from people. I mean, it's one thing if there is, for example, a truly abusive situation in the home, that's one thing. But just doing it because the parents aren't complying with these agendas is a whole other thing. And we don't want parents to be able to lose their rights and things. So we really want to take a look at that. Be careful what's coming up. From the 1st through the 23rd, we're going to see a lot of exposure coming up around false humanitarian partnerships. So when I see that, you want to start looking at people like Oprah, the Clintons, the Obamas, Bill Gates. So these are false partnerships. And when I say false humanitarian partnerships, that's where they pretend that they're giving and sharing with all these organizations, but they really aren't. There's other hidden agendas that are inside of them. They appear to be giving, but they're not. And then they're networked in, and you believe that things like even the Sierra Club, even Red Cross, things like that, where they're built up as these humanitarian organizations, and their partnerships are falsely created. They all interweave back to each other. So when you start to get in there and you look at who the partnerships are, who the sponsors are, who is supporting them, who's sponsoring them, things like that, they all come back to each other's organizations. So that's what I mean, false humanitarian partnerships. They're not true partnerships in there because it's all about funneling money between their own organizations. And it's that way they can control a lot more in those types of situations. We're going to see in this aspect also, and I should have jumped back to the year. I skipped one piece on that. Also in the main part of the month, not the year, the month. I'm having trouble talking this afternoon, hit my head earlier. Not a good thing. So jumping back into the main part of the month, which runs through the whole month for a second in here, one of the things, and it actually ties in with these false humanitarian partnerships, is we're going to see an increase of greed and insecurities. And that is rising among those that are in this space of trying to remove the family rights, of operating in the false humanitarian partnerships. And they will work with treachery, with deception, with manipulation. This is going to come up. The more greedy and the more insecure somebody is, the more they're going to be putting out these falsehoods and these lies. And we have to keep in mind that anything that they offer as a gift, we put that in quotes, right? Because it will always have attachments to it. It's never really a gift. It's never really a free thing. So we really have to be careful, because what will happen is they try to lure you in with the gift, and then they try to say, then it's really not about that at all. It's really about getting something from you. It's kind of like, when they were doing all the jabs and stuff like that, and they were like, here's free donuts for a year, here's a free burger for a year, that type of thing. And it really wasn't about that. They were greedy because they wanted the money from you getting that jab. So that's where it comes from. Now, the more insecure they're feeling, the more they're going to try to bait people in. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. And they're going to work through these different partnerships. Just today, before I got on, I was hearing about how Dove is supporting the BLM movement. So that's a partnership. That's a false humanitarian partnership. And some of these humanitarian organizations are created by the corrupt, again, just to funnel this money around. We're also, from in the first 3 weeks of the month, going to be seeing these huge power plays going on between those in materialism and those in spirit. So this is kind of like that church versus state aspect, but we know, of course, there's a lot of churches that are bedded with state in there. But we're going to see those that are heavy in materialism with those that are truly operating in spirit. So the battles are going to magnify. So we want to look at that and pay attention. Well, where are these battles coming up, and who stands to gain from them? This is always the question in mind. Who stands to profit? Who stands to gain from what's happening in the situation? So part of this, a big part of this materialism trying to attack the spirit, is about trying to create suffering for it so that it makes it much harder to exist. So we want to also look at that. Who is creating the suffering? Who's experiencing the suffering? And we, again, need to see beyond the lies and illusions and the deceptions and the manipulation in all of those pieces, and how maybe multiple organizations that are working together, that are in these false partnerships, will come forward and try to attack one or two people in place. So we want to pay attention to that as well. Attempts to break spirit by convincing people to turn their power over. So we're going to see this. When this happens, how does this happen? How does this manifest in our world? It happens by attacking our rights. So we can really expect coming up here in October some big attacks on our rights. You know, we've already seen it happen on the Second Amendment. We've seen the attacks happen on the First Amendment. We've seen attacks happen in a variety of different ways. And so they're hoping that the more that they go in and attack the rights that people have, we could see this in, you know, other amendments that show up where the legal process isn't operating as it should, or things like that. And so that's going to attempt to break the spirit. Don't let it get you down. We will move past these things, but they are going to make the attempts. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be successful at them, but they will make the attempts. And again, these attempts are all about breaking people's spirit to the point that they just go, okay, we give up. We'll do what you want. And that's not the direction that we want to take. We will see attempts to create suffering on people, and this will continue. Now, this could happen in a variety of ways. We could see power outages go down. We could see attempts at food shortages. I'm already seeing, and I know this sounds strange because so many people got behind the truckers a couple of years back, and over the last few years, now I'm seeing infiltration happen in truckers, which is interesting. It's something that I've been able to observe being on the road. And that's kind of an interesting and powerful thing to see happen. And it's something that just really hit me today. And I'm like, you know, it's very interesting. I've seen a shift in the demographics, if you want to say that, of truck drivers, because I am in truck stops many nights when I'm traveling. I don't pay for hotel rooms all the time. And so in doing that, I see this turnover of who the truck drivers are, who the so-called demographics are that are connected to the truck drivers. And I can tell you they're using some of the people that are coming into the country. I'm going to be flat out about that. They're using some of the people that are coming into the country. They're getting them in these positions because there's so-called shortages. They take them in, they train them, they give them some good money to do these things. And I have a feeling there's an infiltration of sorts going on there. And why would they do this? Because if they get this infiltration, then they can shut down supply chains, because they'll tell these people, you're not driving, or they'll pay them not to drive, or they'll pay them bonuses to not do their routes or to do various things. I also notice more and more that there are aspects to put in truck stops near schools. And I think that that probably connects to some human trafficking. I think there's some stuff going on there as well. And I can't, you know, say absolute about that. This is my personal opinion. And I want to stress that it is my personal opinion. It's coming from observations that I see while I'm traveling around. I've seen some things that are concerning in that direction, but I cannot absolutely verify them with facts. So that's why I'm stating this. All of this, why would this be happening? Because this comes back to attempts to create suffering. Again, these aspects of our food chain in particular going up. So I think that there will be more coming in through that. Again, trying to possibly restrict people. I'm not sure that people are really buying into that. So I think they're going to attack in ways that people don't necessarily have a defense against. And so we really, really, really want to be careful. So again, this is in the first 3 weeks of October. Now, in the last week and a half or so, last week of the month, I would say, we want to be very, very careful because our health is much more vulnerable than normal during that time. We may find that we may see news coming out of more viruses or an increase of people being sick. We know these numbers are going to be skewed. We know that this is going to come from certain demographics. And I think, it will come out even more. It will probably bring more disclosure based on who is and is not getting sick, but it is that warning. You want to take your and boost your vitamins, be extra careful, be extra healthy, especially during that time, and boost your immune system. Again, come back to all your basics that legitimate sources are talking about. We know sunlight helps. We know that zinc helps. We know that vitamin C helps. We know that all of these types of things help to boost the immunity. So you can look that up, and there's some great sources out there as far as what will do that. If you reduce like your sugar intakes and some of your caffeine intakes and different things like that, it will help your body to stay healthier. So it's not hard to do that for a week. I know we all have our food things that we love, but it's worth it for staying healthy, because there are going to be more things pushed into the public at that time. And again, sometimes these things get pushed in the public, and then they might come back and they might start showing up even, 3 weeks or a month or so later, but they're being pushed in the public. And that's part of why I give you these insights, which I have, and they're all, they're in my book, and help you to know when your body is in this more vulnerable space, so that you can work with the foresight, so that you do have that ability to go in and take care of yourself and defend yourself, so to say, against what is being put out there in the world. Also, in that last week, we have a big thing about that is going to give us some hope, because we're going to start seeing where our efforts have paid off. So where people have been persistent in fighting what is corrupt, where people have been persistent in standing up for themselves. I think of like the voter lawsuits out there, as far as what's happened in voter things. And I think of those. I think we might start seeing where that starts coming forward. But hope. It's going to give people that there is hope from those successes. So we want to look for that. We want to be inspired by that. We want to be encouraged by that, and to realize that, yes, it takes time and it takes effort. But when you start seeing those results and that time and that effort pay off, it is worth every bit of it. And that's why I always tell people, don't get discouraged. Keep persevering, stay with it, and we will see it. And that's something that we're going to get a glimpse at in that last week. We'll see where the efforts are paying off and what is coming forward. So that will be hopeful for people. As far as actions go, what kind of specific actions we can start seeing to come up or be taken during this time? Well, from the 1st through the 11th, we can expect that there will be attempts to victimize with blocks and restrictions. So here again, I think what we're going to do is we're going to see those partnership connections are going to try to work together. They're going to use lies and the deception and the manipulation, and that's going to be used to turn people against each other, just like we went through before, where they had everybody so busy battling and divided that they weren't paying attention to what was really being done. So we can't allow ourselves to go into that division. We don't want to get wrapped up in these arguments again over various things. We want to stay focused on the fact that they're trying to block and restrict us, and stand up to that. I think a lot of people are much more willing to stand up to that now than they were before. They've kind of had that trial run. I look at 2020 as kind of a trial run in things of what was happening. And it's really these people who are in positions of authority that are going to be working on turning people against each other. So we really, really, really want to be careful of that. We don't want to go down that path. We don't want to waste our time arguing with each other. It's, people either believe the facts or they don't believe the facts. And sitting there and arguing over everything is not going to benefit us. Instead, we need to put our energy into standing up to any blocks and restrictions that are attempted to be in there. Those in authority positions are going to use fear. They're going to use threats. They're going to create disorder, chaos, and confusion, because if they can create the chaos, if they can create disorder, if they can create confusion, and that could even include some false flags or things along that line could surface during that first week and a half there. They may try to implement that to also create confusion and chaos to distract people. So we've got to stop and think, is this a distraction? Is this something that is trying to pull my attention away from something else? And be attentive to that and be alert for that, because that's how they sneak things in, is by distracting us. And wherever we start to feel that confusion or there's a lot of chaos, we want to start looking at what they're doing, because it is just that. It is just that. It's there to confuse us, to distort our thinking, to get our thinking down different patterns, and to just not see the truth in things. So we'll really want to check things out very, very thoroughly. Don't take things at face value. We'll probably see a lot of clickbait stuff coming out during that time, so you want to be very, very careful of that. Also, we're going to see an increase in censorship and attack on rights. So again, that attack on rights is coming up again. It's getting magnified during this time, and the censorship may be the one option that they try to do, because they have control over that. You know, they don't necessarily have control whether people want to obey restrictions or anything like that, but they do have control over censoring people. So I would expect during that first week and a half that one of the actions they're going to take is to increase censorship. And I even saw today, before I jumped on here, there's like an account going around that I think is a hacker account on Facebook, and it's trying to convince people that your accounts are going to be shut down and to click a link. So don't do any of that stuff because it's saying you're being censored and these sorts of things. So really, really be careful. Most of those probably aren't going to be legitimate. You really have to take closer look at them. Don't click links if you're not familiar, even if they come from your friends. You can copy and paste the link into a new browser window and then see if it goes anywhere. Chances are it probably won't, but if you click the link in the message or in the post that claims that it's yours or something like that, or that they're sharing your post, that's going to create a hack in your account. You'll want to go in, change your password, those sorts of things. So stay on top of that. That's also another way to victimize people in there, and to create attacks on them. So that's something to pay attention to. A lot of strong competition energy, and this is going to be for status, fame, and fortune. So that means this competition is probably going to come from the most insecure people, the people who are the greediest, and they're all going to be competing for more money, more this, more that, more that. And so we want to stay on top of that. Who is doing that? Who's in competition with each other? Not just in the way I mentioned before, like spirit versus materialism, but we're going to see those who are greedy versus those who are greedy coming up during this time. So this is all about vying for bigger positions of power, is what's happening in there. So we want to keep an eye on that, who's gaining power during that first week and a half. And then for the last 2/3 of the month, the actions that we're likely to see is there will be attempts to get or maintain control over others. Again, so that's a kind of a continuation of those blocks and restrictions. There's something that they're going to put out there probably that is connected to trying to gain control over people. They're looking for any way that they can do that. So we're going to have to be really, really vigilant that we're not turning our power over. We're going to have to be very, very careful that we are paying attention to things that might sound good, but they're not really good in the long run. And again, doing that research, and looking at, if somebody is holding some kind of threat or holding you in fear, like if you don't do this, you're not going to have a job, or these sorts of things, you want to watch for that. and don't let yourself be pushed into it by people. We're going to see the dictators and the authoritarians try to restrict people and remove their rights. So again, this is coming back. Overall, one of the big actions that they're taking in October is attempts to remove rights, and people are going to have to stand up. They're going to have to be vocal. They're going to have to speak against it. They're going to have to show up. And what I do see is, especially if people are willing to do that, that these attempts to remove rights are going to backfire on them. So particularly in this last 2/3 of the month, last 3 weeks, whatever you want to say, I would say it's really going to backfire on them. So it's okay if they try, then we will speak up. And then what will happen will be more things will be uncovered to show and prove that they are dictators and authoritarians, and that they are not working in the best interest of the people. And it is going to expose their true motives. So kind of that, get through the hard part of it and the challenging part of it, and that will bring greater exposure. And of course, that's going to benefit us as people, as humanity in that process. We're probably going to see some weather manipulation in those last 2/3 of October from the 12th on, so a little over the half a month there. Weather manipulation coming in to create storms. And again, where they feel like they're losing on everything else, they'll probably use that to help create suffering, to use that as an excuse of power going down, of heat not being able to be run, of a variety of things. And again, where some places have gone to a lot of electric vehicles or things like that, it's also mobilizing people if they can't charge their vehicle and go anywhere. So keeping those things in mind. Now moving into the thoughts aspect, learning is going to be happening through observing. So we want to watch, observe. Don't get distracted by the dangling carrot or the hand over here. You want to really pay attention to what's actually happening. And you're only going to see what's happening if you really observe. And it's going to take observing some of those finer details to see that in there. This is from the 1st through the 4th, by the way, on here. And really looking at what that is bringing up. Now, through that period of time, we're also then going to see from like the couple of days in there, we're also going to be seeing things that are connected to endings and deaths. And it's very easy in the truther community to jump right in and assume that the deaths are orchestrated, let's say. But these probably aren't. Most of the deaths that we will see happening will be the result of careless action. Now, there's a lot of things that could play into that, but most of them will be the result of that. They will be actual true accidents going on. And, yes, there are some that might appear to be accidents that are not, but most of them are actually going to be the result of careless action. So people want to pay extra attention. That's kind of a warning. You do not, in that first part of the month, people are not going to be thinking clearly. They're not going to be paying attention to what's happening. So it's really not a good time to be out doing protests during that time, because you get in a crowd, something happens, accidents happen, and we could see people hurt and injured during that time. So it is really best to stay out of the protest during that time, because I think it's really, and that could be part of the false flags is, they don't know who they're going to hit, but they're going to hit some people. So we want to pay attention to that. We also have aspects of the past resurfacing to help us in there, and that's going to be there to help us learn what is happening. And that's going to be important, because where we see the past repeating itself, that's also going to show us what plans are being set in motion, what agendas are being implemented. So we really want to think about what is resurfacing. How is the past repeating itself? And also the corruption is thinking, what pieces of the past are we going to try to repeat? Again, it's up to us whether we play along with that game or not. Hopefully we won't play along with that game. but we do want to pay attention, and there will be a lot of information. So again, observing that, and that's the big piece to observe. Observe how the past is repeating itself. And when we do that, we will understand the actions that need to be taken and the foresight that needs to be implemented. From the 5th through the 22nd, we're going to see a rise in information warfare. So we can expect the battles to come out, lots of information being put forth. That's probably going to lead to some of the censorship. The information is going to be flowing out. Censorship's going to come down because those who are corrupt and have things to hide will want to censor what's coming out, so that we can see probably another big layer of that coming through. And this information warfare, a big part of what it is to control the thoughts of the people or the masses, and because they want to seek mental superiority. If they can feel like they've established mental superiority over the people, then they will feel like they can control and manipulate them. So we have to be very, very careful of that. We have to be on top of it. We again have to be paying attention. It's better to take some time to truly observe things and don't just go along with whatever is being said. Do your research on it. So we're definitely going to see that, and we do know the motive behind it is about gaining mental superiority through this. So you want to make sure that you're not allowing people to influence your thoughts, to program your mind, and that happens through so many things so subtly, whether we're talking advertising, whether we're talking the news, whether we're talking any of those things. There's always these programs that are being placed into your mind. So we have to be very, very careful about that from the 11th through the 22nd. We're going to see true intentions and plans exposed from within through mistakes. So what's going to happen is those people who are operating corruptly, who are in power, people that are close to them are going to make mistakes. And why does this happen? Well, because those who are in power, who really are not working for the benefit of humanity, one of the things they like to do is to surround themselves with people who are not very smart. And people who are not very smart make mistakes. And those mistakes that are going to be made are going to bring exposure. So we're going to see this in these corrupt leaders, because it's very hard to keep a lie going for any long period of time. So we're going to see this coming up, and you'll see probably a lot of excuses coming up. Oh, well, that was just a mistake, or that was just a mistake. But I don't think they're going to be able to hide it, because these mistakes are going to expose things that is going to be very hard for them to cover up, or they may not be able to cover up. And that is going to open some of that information warfare to come out. And so we can expect probably some pretty great information coming forward, some pretty big things being exposed. Also, during this time, there's going to be attempt to regain command of life from authorities. So we need to make sure that we are looking at where are we turning our power over to authorities? Where have we given them command over our life? And we need to stop that. We need to step back and say, yeah, I think I'll hang on to my power. I think I will not allow the school to decide what is best for my child. I will decide what's best for my child, type of thing. We want to take a look at where they're trying to take control of things and stand up and say, absolutely not. So again, that plays into some things I talked about earlier, where they're going to try to take rights away. We cannot turn our command over. We need to take our power back. We need to take our command back from authorities. And that is very, very important. I'm not talking in the way a criminal does that. I'm talking in the fact of where, again, you're allowing the government to make a lot of decisions about your life. And it's important that they don't do that. You need to keep that control. Now, in the very last week of the month, the 23rd through the end of the month, the aspect of what's happening in the thought area, the mind aspect that we want to pay attention to is, again, we see this piece of efforts paying off and things getting completed during that time. So we want our mindset to be on how we can get our efforts to pay off, or the effort that we put forward during that time how it will pay off, looking at that, looking ahead a little bit at the impact that our choices will make. And we want to look at how do we bring things into completion as well. So really taking a look at that component. Now, when we move into the spiritual piece, and I know it always sounds strange that we have a spiritual piece in world affairs, but we do. We really do, because it's really about where do we hold our soul self? How do we stand in spirit among this world? And during this time, from the 1st to the 8th, what we're going to see is we will see attempts to try to create stress to break us down, and to particularly break down our immunity. So if they're creating stress, that's going to break down our immunity. And so we want to be careful where that's happening. And that breaks us down spiritually, because when our body is trying to fight things off, when it's trying to stay healthy, and it's getting all of this stress, the stress literally creates a separation between our human self and our soul self, or between us and God. And when that happens, we go down some pretty rough paths. And when we're separated from God, when we're separated from the soul self, then we tend to make a lot of mistakes. We tend to make a lot of poor choices, and we tend to go down a lot of paths that are very unfavorable for us. Victories can add to stress, even in that, there can be aspects of, even when you get victories, there can be aspects, well, what's going to happen as a result of that victory in there. So many times we'll think of that as a positive stress, but what is going to be positive for people is if they can stand up to what's happening through the soul self in partnership with God. And we talked about partnerships early. That's a partnership that we want to hold in there. People will have more strength to stand up for their values. And that is, again, very, very important. So if we are doing that, we can minimize the stress and bring the victories up, and therefore not making our bodies so susceptible to catching things. Also, we want to stay focused on coming together. Remember, I mentioned that earlier. There's going to be those plots where they're going to try to be dividing people. And instead, we want to look at where's our common ground? Where can we come together? We all want safe neighborhoods. We all want good, clean food to eat. We want fresh air. We want, these positive things in our life. And these are some of the common grounds. We don't always agree about how it's going to happen, but when we come together and we stand in the truth, and we stand in divine alignment in the truth, then we become a really super powerful force of things, because that helps us to move beyond the agendas and the lies that we're being fed, which again also break down our spirit and keep us from manifesting and creating some incredible things in this world that are very valuable for us individually and as a collective humanity. From the 9th going forward through the rest of the month, so about we had that first week, and now, the last 3 weeks of the month, as far as spirit is concerned, we need to make sure that we are meeting our responsibilities peacefully and with unconditional love. And again, this is about harmonizing our differences. So really, all year long, we got to look at it and say, hey, you're great at this, I'm great at that. Let's harmonize our differences, and let's rise up to say no to what's actually truly damaging for us in the world. Let's rise up and face the lies together. And when we start to do that, we start to harmonize our differences, we're going to have an unstoppable force. And that's going to be truly powerful and truly incredible to see where it happens. Also in the spiritual arena, we want to really focus on our ability to be ethical and in integrity. So our ethics and our integrity is going to be tested. This is very important, again, to look beyond the agenda and realize what the true agendas are in something, and to not be swayed. They will actually try to play on people's guilt, on trying to tell them, well, this is what's ethical, this is what's in integrity. They did this with masks, they did with this with the jabs, they did this with a variety of things. And we need to step back because that is programming, and that's the type of programming that we have to be careful of. We really want to look at truly what is an integrity and what is ethical. And if it's asking us to take all kinds of sides and be divided, it probably isn't. So we have to come back into that where we can again find unity and harmonizing going on between people, and to stand up for what is truly right and what is truly in divine alignment. Corruption will move into their own misery. So again, this positive thing of seeing where our efforts are paying off, the more we come together, the more we find that common ground, the more we harmonize our differences, the corruption is going to create their own misery. And this is going to happen when people are strong enough to not play their game. So again, they bring their own exposure, they bring their own misery and things. As long as we are standing up and being strong and not playing their games. And that is part of standing in the soul self. So much of what happens in our world, and so much of being able to avert the challenges and the agendas and the things that are thrown at us by those who are not working to truly benefit humanity, comes from the spiritual components. It comes from our spiritual connection. So keep that in mind as we go through October. That's it. That's going to cover it for this month. I hope you guys have a great month. I'll be back with you towards the end of October, bringing out the insights for the following month. And until then, be safe, keep it together, stand strong, and don't let people take your rights away from you. Don't let people remove you from what you know is right, just because you're in fear, or just because somebody's trying to make you feel guilty, or just because they're trying to test your integrity or convince you, or because of programs, or because of everybody else is doing it. It takes each one to do it. And if you're strong enough to stand up in your own life, you are going to become a living example that will help others find their strength and stand up for it as well. And you never know when you might be that leader. You never know when you may be the one giving somebody else or inspiring them to have the strength to stand also in that space of truth and integrity. I will see you next month, everybody. Take care.